So our agenda is to move into a couple things. I want to move into the subject of establishing the point of tension so that you can understand how to get a deeper sense of your purpose, as well as I want to get into the subject of divine indifference. And I also mentioned to you that I thought it would be good to give you the mantras for each of the rays. Let me do that now. And people use these as mantras or as affirmations. So, and they can be useful to explore and experiment with. Okay, and these are just short sentences, a sentence for each. And so the mantra for the first ray is this: I assert the fact. I assert the fact with a capital F. I assert the fact. That's the first ray mantra. The second ray mantra is I see the greatest light. I see the greatest light. The third ray mantra is purpose itself am I. Purpose itself am I. Okay. The fourth ray mantra is to merge with one. To merge with one. The fifth ray mantra, three minds unite. Three minds unite. Each of these I could give you an explanation of this too, I suppose. The sixth ray mantra is the greatest light controls. The greatest light controls. And the seventh ray mantra is the highest and lowest meet. The highest and lowest meet. Now, is there anything you want to, in a way, there's parts of each of those that you can get a sense of its relationship to the ray. Any clarity you'd like on that? On any of them?
I think the greatest light controls.
The greatest light controls. That's the sixth ray mantra. In other words, the sixth ray mantra has this sort of remember the second ray is I see the greatest light, but the sixth ray is the greatest light controls, meaning that's the way. That's the focus. So the sixth ray is much more focused, you see. The fifth ray sometimes throws people off. Three minds unite. We talk about the mind in esotericism. We talk about the human mind, that there's. You've heard the expression, I'm of two minds. Well, you're actually of three minds. Thought I'd let you know. You're actually of three minds. There's three structures of the mental body. I'll show you. You have the concrete mind, which is the mind that is largely used by your personality. That's the analytical mind. You have what is called the abstract mind. That's the mind that much of this philosophy is being delivered to you through that part of the mental field, because the abstract mind is often less developed, and that's the mind that shows large principles, deeper patterns of truth. This is much more factual, detailed type of thinking. Then you have something that is kind of archaic language, but it's called the sun of mind. And that's a reference to the mind of the soul itself, the wisdom held within your causal body. And all of that, the whole thing, is part of the mental plane. This is the division between the higher mental region and the lower. And if you look at the planes of consciousness, that graphic I gave you, all of this is the fifth plane. The fifth plane. Therefore, the whole fifth plane is ruled by the fifth ray. And the mantra goes, may three minds unite. It's when all three parts of your mental instrument are cooperatively relating to each other. That's the higher ideal of the fifth ray. That's what that means, okay? All right. And by the way, I should mention also, for the clarity, both of these parts of your mind, both of these parts are abstract, because the higher division of the mental plane is where you have more abstractions, broader principles. The difference between this part of your abstract mind and this part is this is a bunch of abstract ideas, but they have nothing to do with your personal experience. Whereas this is abstract wisdom that has been earned through the crucible of thousands of incarnations. Both of them have abstract truths in them, but this is better from the point of view it's superior because it's experienced. It's a part of the fabric of your higher nature. These are ideations that may be intriguing to your mind and it may be helpful for moving forward, but they're not really part of the deeper part of your incarnational experience, okay? Yeah?
Discernment then is the son of mind and concrete mind working in unison to decide on abstraction. Discernment
is what?
As in discernment would be son of mind and concrete mind working to formulate a concept, say, from the abstract.
Yeah, that's true too. In a way, the whole mental plane is a plane focusing on developing wise discernment, and that all kind of have a piece of the puzzle, but I see what you're saying, that these two somehow help get clarity of this. There's truth to that too. Oh, there's so much I could say. There's another thing about this that has to do with things above, but I can't go down that road now. But this will lead, that's what is meant, three minds unite. Any other of the mantra things you want to clarify? Yeah? Okay. Purpose itself am I. Purpose itself am I. Purpose itself am I. The key, there's a little bit of a nuance to that one too. When you hear the word purpose in esotericism, you usually think first ray, the ray of will and purpose. The key word in that mantra for the third ray is purpose itself am I. The key word is itself. Because the third ray is very much manifesting, it's about getting in there and doing something. And so its purpose in itself is formless. But when it becomes an it, the third ray makes purpose an it. Purpose itself am I, is what it's talking about. Okay? Okay. First ray sees the purpose, second will destroy things in the way. Second ray says, here's new ideas. Third ray says, hey, I got a clever idea, let's make it happen. And the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh all say, yeah, we can help you do that, third ray. So there's that's why the first three rays are called rays of aspect. Here, I'll show you something else real quick. These are these tangents that I never know where I'm going to go. So you've got the first ray, second ray, third ray, then 4, 5, 6, and 7. The first three rays are the rays of aspect. That's why sometimes you hear in this philosophy they talk about the three aspects: will, love, and intelligence. They're the most fundamental. They're the Trinity. 4, 5, 6, and 7, though, have subsidiary relationship to this, because this is pure divine intelligence. But these these four, are called rays of attribute, because they're attributes out of this. This is pure intelligence. Well, the fourth ray is the ray of beauty. It's a type of intelligence. Fifth ray is knowledge, a type of intelligence. Sixth ray is idealism, a type of intelligence. Seventh ray is organization, a type of intelligence. So they're attributable to this. Now, why not thicken it more for you? Even though these four rays are strongly connected to the third ray of making it happen, intelligent activity, you can see that there are lines of affinity also. So for instance, the second ray has an energetic connection with the fourth ray and the sixth ray. It's love, beauty, idealism. And the first ray has affinity with this one and this one. There's an energetic connection with those as well. So there's a network here, and I could go further into this, but I just wanted you to understand why it is that we can say that, why is it that I just use the first three and say that they're so important. Actually, all of these are sort of subsets of it.
The beauty that you're here now, I wouldn't have understood that knowing, but I think I've grasped in that something has poetry in it.
Uh-huh.
There's
Poetry is beauty?
Something that you have to write, that's beautiful. You can just see it in it. That's
Yeah.
what you mean by beauty.
Well, beauty it's a wide thing. Yeah, so
But
poetry is a part of it.
You know it's right because it's beautiful.
Yes, that's true too. That's true too. You know it's right because they go hand in hand. Okay, so let's. I'm going to go into the side idea, point of tension, and so forth. But before I do that, I want to show you some quotes by key people in history as they talk about destiny and purpose. Okay, just for fun. Well, fun, I guess so. Let me see. So, thoughts from great minds about this. This is by Thoreau. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you've imagined. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. There is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. Foundation. Seventh ray. Unknown author. Sow a thought and reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit and reap character. Sow character and reap destiny. You've perhaps heard that before. Okay? No trumpets sound when the important decisions of our life are made. Destiny is made known silently. Silently. You get the idea there. Sometimes people have this sort of, I got to let everybody know. No, it should be, yeah. Winston Churchill, it is a mistake to try to look too far ahead. The chain of destiny can only be grasped one link at a time. That's another key concept in esotericism. When it comes to moving toward your destiny and your spiritual work, it's not about I'm striving that there. It's about holding your alignment in such a way that the best of your consciousness is being held, and what happens is something called circumstantial deva begin to participate in your process. Now, deva is a word for angelic intelligence. In fact, deva is just another word for angelic. But there's a category of angelic intelligences called the Deva kingdom. But there's a group called the circumstantial Deva. These are types of angelic intelligences that actually shape circumstance so that right people cross your path at the right time. The phone rings and the person you need to talk to happens to call at the moment. You know that? You know those synchronicities? Carl Jung would call them meaningful coincidences, but there's a whole occult understanding of how that works. So when you hold yourself in a particular alignment, the circumstantial devas begin to pattern circumstance so that something opens. And so, but it both opens and invites. So it opens, invites, and there's one more step. But you don't know nothing but one more step. Then something opens and invites. So there's no push. There's no push. There's simply beingness and the larger system creates a vacuum of opportunity and then therefore invites. That's the same idea of one link at a time idea, and don't think about the whole thing. You just allow it to. It's more of an unfolding process than a self-constructed process in a way.
Yeah.
You get that? Okay, let's take a look at this one. Ideals are like stars. You will not succeed in touching them with your hands, but like the seafaring man on the ocean desert of waters, you choose them as your guides and following them, you reach your destiny. Okay, let's look at another. Real constructive mental power lies in the creative thought that shapes your destiny, and your hour-by-hour mental conduct produces power for change in your life. Develop a train of thought on which to ride. The nobility of your life, as well as your happiness, depends upon the direction in which that train of thought is going. Reminds me of another way of understanding destiny and purpose. The Tibetan, Master Morya, the master that is said to oversee the whole first-story ashram, he once said this about destiny. He says, I'm paraphrasing, but if you want to know the destiny of your soul, he said, look to the trend of your thinking. Look to the trend of your thinking in your high moments, when you're thinking about life, how the world is, what the world needs, and what your natural inclination of interest and inquiry is. Because in that trend of thought, there's a golden thread, and that's it. So one thing to really think about in terms of your passion is, what do you like to think about? What do you like to think about? And I don't mean the day-to-day thoughts. I mean when you think about the big picture, when you think about the needs of the larger whole. Some people, they're preoccupied with thinking about the whole alternative healing world. Other people might be passionate about thinking about science and how it could do something to help somebody. You see? In other words, what is that trend of thought? Do you folks remember, do you know who Joseph Campbell was? The great mythologist? Now he made a statement once that became like a buzzword around the world. He probably made this famous everywhere. Anybody know what it is?
Follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. Esotericism would actually rephrase it a little bit. Instead of follow your bliss, we would say, follow the trend of your thinking that leads to bliss. In other words, it's not just bliss, it's the thought life and the pattern of thought. Now, why is that so important? Well, I just happen to have talked to you about that because your causal body, which is here, is in the higher mental frame, mental part of your inner life. And so the soul itself, because it resides on the higher mental plane, it has a tendency to launch trends of thought. So what do you like to think about? It's kind of what this is getting at too, in a way. Okay? John F. Kennedy. Oh, John F. Kennedy, he's pretty well regarded here. Our problems are man-made, therefore they may be solved by man. And man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Albert Ellis. The best years of your life are the ones in which you decide your problems are your own. You don't have to blame them on your mother, the ecology, or the president. You realize that you control your own destiny. There's a lot of psychological deflections of casting fault external to yourself. We're good at that. Defense mechanisms reign. Okay? Do you know who Albert Ellis was? He was a cognitive therapist that was one of the most well-known in that. There's many branches to psychology, and he was one of the big names in something called rational emotive therapy. Okay, our character is an omen of our destiny. And the more integrity we have and keep, the simpler and nobler that destiny is likely to be. Okay? I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. So we know that destiny, from a soul perspective, is very much about service to the larger whole. I should mention that the personality loves the word destiny. It loves, there's such a thing as personality destiny too. But the personality's notion of destiny is actually a challenge and a problem. In fact, there's a whole thing called glamour of destiny. The glamour of destiny. And it's really rooted in personality ambition and the desire to stand out as something special and unique from other people. And that's where the glamour of destiny comes in. This has nothing to do with making you look special and unique. That's the last thing the soul is interested in. The part of us that wants to see ourselves as separate and different is personality consciousness. The part of us that wants to see ourselves as part of a unitive whole, that's soul. That's a difference in each of us. That's a way of discerning soul. The personality is separative consciousness. The soul is unitive consciousness. You see? So personality perspective on destiny is, I have this purpose that's going to make me stand out as different than everybody else. Many of the big names in history, I suppose, who have been very ego-driven, who seem to have had a destiny, that's a personality destiny and it's filled with glamour. Whereas sometimes the higher kind of destiny is not about making yourself special at all. Okay. Oop, sorry, did I get you the last one? I guess not. Hang on. Back. Sorry. Yeah. Man's ultimate destiny is to become one with the divine power which governs us and sustains the creation and its creatures. Okay. Just some thoughts from other minds, actually. Okay, so let's get into this idea of the point of tension. The point of tension. Okay? Establishing the point of tension. Now, really, even the word tension and spirituality often are not connected to each other. We usually disconnect those. Tension and spirituality or soul doesn't feel right. But first thing I want you to know is that we're not talking about the kind of tension that is about, holding in your nervous system tension. We're not talking about tension that requires gritting your teeth. Not at all. We're talking about a different kind of tension. And this so-called point of tension has two directions that we want to look at. Two directions. One is relevant in meditation, and the other is relevant when it comes to your day-to-day life expression in the world. One has a verticalness to it, the other has a horizontalness to it. Because this point of tension is important because it is said that psychologically it is the place that creates a sense of positive receptivity, is the terminology. Positive receptivity to a downflow from above. Okay? And it's interesting because I said earlier that the whole story of this is a story about the importance of will, remember? The will? Well, this is where the will comes in, because the point of tension is deeply connected to higher will deep inside. In fact, let me give you a definition. This is the definition the Tibetan has given about the point of tension. He calls it this. He says it is the focused, immovable will. The focused, immovable will. Okay? And it's something that in meditation we try to establish. So let me talk about that piece first. Are all of you meditators on some level? Okay. Okay, well, typically when we meditate, the natural thing people learn in meditation, and it's the right first step, is we want to go inside ourselves and we want to feel that kind of loving, expansive connection. We yearn to feel the love and unity of the larger whole. You all know that feeling when you kind of go deep inside yourself and you feel a kind of expansiveness. You know that feeling? You feel expansive. It almost feels like you're kind of merging into the allness of things, you know? So there's a wide heart orientation that is felt in meditation. It's the love principle. It widens. It widens. Remember, love is rooted in the sense of oneness of things. And so the heart, meditatively, the heart brings you into that wide, expansive field inside, and that's fantastic. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people say is the end result. It is the end result if you're on the mystical path. It is considered mystical meditation. Mystical meditation is all about coming into that broad, loving, wonderful, expansive feel. Occult meditation, which is what esotericism is advising, includes the mystical component to it, but adds one more feature. It adds the use of the higher mind coupled with the point of tension. So, let me kind of dramatize this a little bit so you can sense this. The point of tension is something that when you meditate, after you've gotten that sense of wide, loving connection, then there's this sense of what can happen with just that is that sometimes there's a sense of just being open and whatever happens, happens. But esotericism says you want to have the will energy as part of it because it'll help you to connect with the ashram more correctly. Do you remember what the ashram is now? Okay, you know, okay. So there is a sense of finding a centered point of power deep inside where that sense of focused, immovable will can be held. It's a sense of being on a steel beam and thrusting a part of yourself, a part of your perception of beingness, thrusting it deeper than that broad, loving, expansive place. And it's as if you're using the will and simultaneously trying to hold the love. If I were you to use it in the most generic way, I could say that the first ray is the great energy of the father principle, and the second ray is the great energy of the mother principle. You can see that, can't you, how you might say that? I mean, if I had to say what are the two most fundamental energies, I would say it's will and love, or father and mother. And much of meditation historically, particularly on the mystical path, is the mother approach. Occult meditation says, no, let's do mother and father. Mother and father. Which means we have to figure out how to hold that power point and at the same time have that loving, broad expanse. And that's not easy, by the way, because you see, the principle of will and love, for a long time in our journey, those two things seem to negate each other. You know, on the lower level, just on a personal level, forget meditation for just a minute. On the lower level, will and love do not agree in personality life. You know, love as a personality, love looks at will and goes, you are dangerous. That's not spiritual. Down the lower level, will looks at love and says, you are impotent, powerless. Okay? Got to dramatize it a little bit. Okay. So that's the personality level. Then at the level of the soul, that's where they really start to dance. Because at that level of consciousness, they realize that they need each other. And so from the level of the soul, they're trying to get into right relationship with each other. Your soul is filled with love. Your soul is the soul is the Christ in you. But remember, even the soul, even though the soul is filled with Christ consciousness, where is it found? On the higher mental plane, which is more masculine. So the very position of the soul and yet the nature of it, you can see both the energy of the father and the mother in the whole thing. What's interesting is, beyond that, when you get above this, where the ashram is, because the ashram is beyond this, okay? When you get out to that level, they fuse as one. There's no difference. So it's separateness, unity, synthesis. And by the way, those are the big 3 steps in evolution. For thousands of lives, we're building personality consciousness, individualized consciousness, separative consciousness. We're trying to build an integrated, powerful ego and stand out as separate and unique. Then eventually you step onto the path and you wake up to your own duality internally, and you start to sense that higher prompting, that soulful prompting. And then you're starting to move into what we call the regime of unity and start to think in unitive terms. And then eventually, when you reach what we call the 3rd initiation, you're beginning to move into the field of synthesis. So it's separateness leads to unity, leads to synthesis. Same is true with love and will here. Separateness, unity, they dance. Synthesis, they're one. You see? So I'm trying to share with you the idea that we want to get love and will into a right relationship. There's a pervasive in the spiritual community, they're in wrong relationship, even in the spiritual community. Why? Because people think that love is somehow superior to will. Nonsense. They're equal and sacred, just different. There's higher love. By the way, there's also lower love. There's higher will. By the way, there's lower will too. The higher and higher together is what we're looking for. But for so long, we have trouble working on getting them into right relationship, and they negate each other. So in meditation, you'll find that, what will happen is you go inside, you feel that quiet expansiveness, you feel the heart participating in creating that experience, which it should, that's important. That's the Christ energy that's part of your life. And then you say, now I've got to bring the point of tension into the system. And I've got to bring the center point and power and will into it. So you assert the will and you find yourself incredibly centered. But what happens is you're asserting the will. And as you do this, what will happen is you'll find that this will collapse. It'll tend to collapse because now you're focused here. And then you say to yourself, oh, wait a minute, I've lost the expansiveness. So then you widen with your heart, and then this comes down. And so even in meditation, there seems to be a back and forth, And by the way, if you do this to music, it's kind of fun, but that's another story, okay? So the key is ultimately to see if you can hold them both without them dancing back and forth like this. That's not easy. And when a person can do that in the fullness of their meditative life, that's one of the many indicators of a transition in consciousness from what we call disciplic life, the life of the disciple, which is what most of us would be relating to, versus what we call the life of the initiate. There's many different ways of understanding the difference between a disciple and an initiate. But this is one of them, the capacity to synthesize will and love and then bring it forth into your day-to-day life, okay?